Hello and welcome to Social Security and Medicare 101, The Basics. My name is Dave Kraus. I'm an attorney with the Chicago law firm of Franco, Maroney and Bunick, and I am also a member of the Illinois State Bar Association Senior Lawyers section. I'm also a recipient of Social Security benefits and have been collecting Social Security benefits for several years now. And also I am covered by the Medicare system. So I have some practical knowledge and some practical information on these topics based on the fact that I've been participating in these programs for several years. Again, this is a very basic program. It probably should be the start of your inquiry rather than the end of your inquiry. There's a lot of nuances to these programs, but we'll hit the basics, and I think it'll give you some ideas as to where you'll want more information to pursue and ultimately make the best decision for you. And I hope that as you leave this seminar, the best thing you get is, or best understanding you have, benefit from the seminar, is the fact that these are complicated decisions. There's no one size fits all for Medicare or for Social Security. It really depends on your personal circumstances, your health, your risk tolerance, and these are all factors you need to consider. So consider your own circumstances based on the rules of Social Security and Medicare, and you'll be able to make the best decision for you. Much of the materials that we're covering today are already covered in two articles I wrote for the State Bar Association. And they appear in the Senior Lawyers Section Council newsletter. One was on Social Security, and it is published in October of 2021, and the other is on Medicare, and it was published in April of 22. So if there's more information or you think you missed something based on what I've talked about today, you can go to those articles. You should be able to pull those up through the ISBA website and get some more detailed information. So let's start here with Social Security. And we're talking today about Social Security retirement benefits. There are other benefits that Social Security provides. For example, you can collect Social Security disability payments, but that's beyond the scope of today's discussion. Also, there are a number of nuances to retirement benefits that may be applicable based on your personal circumstances. For example, if you have a partner, there is the nuance of survivor benefits that can certainly affect your decision, so you'll need to factor those in, but those are so personal and so individual we can't possibly cover those today. The easiest question we'll address today is, are you eligible to collect Social Security benefits? That is pretty easy question, and it boils down to, have you paid Social Security taxes for a sufficient period of time during your working career? Basically, it's tied to a formula of earnings over certain quarters of your employment. But for the most part, if you've been working full-time for 10 years during your working career, most likely you will qualify to receive Social Security benefits. Now, one way to know for sure is a statement you should be getting every year, and I suggest you keep, especially as you reach retirement age, and it's that statement that's on the slide there called Your Social Security Statement you get from the Social Security Administration. And it generally will come right out and tell you you have enough credits, you qualify. It'll give you your employment history of taxes, the income on which you paid your Social Security taxes. Most of us don't keep enough records to really take a close look at those, but definitely look at your employment history and tax payments shown by that statement to make sure there isn't a glaring omission. For example, if you know you've worked pretty much your entire career and the statement shows that you have a gap of a year or two, that's something you should certainly resolve with the Social Security Administration. The other thing that folks really rely on, and I think maybe to a greater degree than they should, is the estimated benefits that are in the Social Security statement that you get yearly from the Social Security Administration. And that's because the assumptions on which those monthly earnings are based may not apply to you. For example, your statement will most likely say that if you retire at 62, your monthly and collect at 62, your monthly benefits will be a certain dollar amount. It'll also likely say that if you start collecting benefits at 65 or your normal retirement age, which may be 67, your monthly benefits will be more a different number, a higher number. And finally, that statement will say that if you wait to collect benefits till 70, your monthly benefit will be a much higher number. But I'm just suggesting that you take that with a grain of salt because the assumptions may not apply to you. For example, on the slide, the statement generally will have the statement that says at your current earnings rate, if you continue working until a certain day, your payment would be about blank. And that's taken from an actual Social Security yearly statement. And the problem is, for example, that 70-year figure that's in your Social Security statement that says that if you wait till 70, you're going to collect a certain amount of money. It has that assumption built into it. It assumes that you're going to be working at your current earnings rate until 70, which is not true for most of us. And that's why I say consider those numbers very carefully, because at first glance you might say, wow, at 70, I will get so much more than I would get at my normal retirement age, or 65 or 67. And so I'll wait. But again, if you're not going to be working at this high rate of earnings, that number is not accurate. And there are more accurate ways to calculate the amount you'll get if you start at 62, 65, or 70. There are more accurate calculators that you can use, which do not assume that you're going to be continuing to work full time until that particular retirement age. And that's why I think that these estimates may be inflated and may not really apply to you. So the rules are you can begin collecting Social Security benefits under current law at 62 years old. Now, deferring Social Security benefits beyond 62, it's generally understood that would increase your benefits on a yearly basis by about 8%, and that would continue until you are 70 years old, at which time you will max out. So delaying beyond 70, delaying to 70 will generally give you a higher monthly benefit, but at 70, that benefit of waiting it goes away, so there's no point in waiting beyond 70. So then the question is, when is it best for you, given your particular circumstances, to collect Social Security benefits? Do you want to do it right away? Do you want to wait to your mid-60s, or do you want to 70s? Until you're 70. And again, it's a highly personal decision, and I've listed on the slide some of the factors, at least that I consider important in deciding when to collect Social Security benefits. And you may have more than I'm listing here, or some of these may apply to you or be important to you and others may not. For example, will you continue working? You'll see in a few minutes we'll have a discussion about how work affects your Social Security benefits, and you'll find that if you're going to be working a substantial amount and you are not at your normal retirement age, and we'll talk about what that is in a moment too, it may not be in your best interest to collect Social Security benefits right away. Second point is, what's your health like? What's your life expectancy? What's your lifestyle? You may never be as mobile as you are now. You may never be as healthy as you are right now. So the question is, would you rather have a reduced benefit now for the lifestyle that you want, or are you willing to wait until later in your 60s or even 70 before you go ahead and collect on your Social Security benefits? Another factor is, do you have other income? You may have a particular lifestyle that you want to achieve, And the question is, do you have other income that allows you to live that lifestyle and thus defer collecting Social Security benefits until later on and collect that higher monthly benefit? And finally, another consideration is, will Social Security law change, and how might that affect your decision? And part of it comes down to, are you a risk taker? What's your risk tolerance? Are you the kind of person that likes? You believe that the old adage of a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, or are you willing to wait? And there are some risks, perhaps, in waiting that we'll talk about in a moment. So the first factor that I want to talk about in detail is, will you continue working, and how much will you continue working? And that the important question there is, what is your normal retirement age? And that's determined by the Social Security Administration. And if you go on the internet, you can put in your birth date, and you will find out what your normal retirement date is. I believe for most, I think the highest normal retirement date now in the system is 57 years old for most folks. So the question is, does it make sense to collect if you're going to be working and you haven't reached your normal retirement age? And the reason is, if you do work and you exceed the earnings limit that we'll talk about in a minute here, Social Security Administration will start reducing your benefits. So for 2022, the earnings limit for both self-employment income and employment income is $19,560, and that applies to folks who have not reached their normal retirement age. So in 2022, if you retired and collected Social Security, let's say at 63, and your normal retirement age was 67, you can't. If you make more than the 19,560, you're going to start getting your benefits reduced in a future year. So for example, let's say you make $10,000 more. The Social Security Administration in 2022 will reduce your benefits by $1 for each $2 you earn beyond the earnings test, the earnings limit. So for example, let's say you make $10,000 past the earnings limit in 2022. Well, that means that you would have Social Security benefits reduced by $5,000, or half of that, and that would occur in the future, which we'll talk about in a moment. There will be when you do begin to collect Social Security benefits, there will be a declaration in your application that you need to tell the Social Security Administration what you expect to earn in the next year, and that can always be modified at some point in the future, and that may change as you progress through the year. Now, the Social Security Administration will have access to your tax returns, and that's how the Social Security Administration will determine whether you have exceeded the earnings limit, and then apply the appropriate reduction. Now, the earnings limit does phase out in the year in which you, let's say you're earning, in the year in which you reach your normal retirement age. So let's say your normal retirement age is 57. The earnings limit will phase out in that day and that year, and for all years after you reach your normal retirement age, the earnings limit does not apply. So you can earn whatever you want, and you will not lose any Social Security benefits. So it really only applies, the earnings limit only applies if you have not if you're working, if you exceed the earnings limit, and if you exceed the earnings limit, and if you and you're not of your normal retirement age, you'll get that reduction. Now, there is an exception to the earnings limit, and it can be particularly applicable to senior lawyers, and it's called the special payments exception. And special payments, for the most part, are payments that you will receive in a subsequent year or in future years that are solely based on the work you did in prior years. For example, let's say that if you retire at the end of 2022, but you get a payment in 2023 or 2024 based on the work you did before you retired, that is in 2022, that will be a special payment. And the Social Security Administration defines it, and it's here in the slide. If the last task you did to earn the payment was completed before you stopped working, then the Social Security Administration will then consider it to be a special payment. And that's important because it's an exception to the earnings limit. Examples might be if you retire at the end of this year, you may get a partnership buyout payment in January of next year. You may receive a bonus based on the work you did in 2022, and you may not get that until January or February of 2023. Likewise, you may have a severance or a separation payment, which again is earned based on your employment in 2022, but you don't receive it until 2023, and that's in a special payment, and that's an exception. And the question, of course, you may wonder, how does the IRS know about this? Well, and the Social Security Administration, because they coordinate, your special payments will likely appear as wages on your W-2 or on your tax return, depending on the amount. So let's say that you get a bonus in 2022 for your work in 2022, but you get it in January of 2023, and let's say you get a $50,000 bonus, and you don't work during 2023. You're just going to collect your Social Security benefits for that entire year of 2023. Well, that $50,000 would typically disqualify you, and you would get your benefits reduced. And again, we'll talk about how that works in a moment, but it would be reduced because you well exceeded the earning limit. $50,000 is well above the $19,560 that is allowed. But because it's considered a special payment, it's not wages that really you earned during your during working in 2023, which you didn't do, but it's based on 2022. It is an exception, and your benefits should not be reduced based on that special payment that you receive. However, the Social Security Administration does have access to your tax returns through the IRS, so expect that you will receive a notice from the Social Security Administration informing you that you exceeded the earnings limit. Again, if you hadn't reached your normal retirement age, that you'll get a notice saying suggesting that they're going to start reducing your Social Security benefits based on the fact that you exceeded your earnings limit. So that's why it's very important to keep good records if you're going to get a special payment. For example, if you're leaving your firm, there should be a firm announcement, there should be an email, something to the effect of you're leaving the firm as of the end of December of 2022, you'll no longer be working with the firm. You may have a bonus agreement which provides that you're going to get a bonus based on your work for 2022, but it's not going to be paid till 2023. You may have a severance agreement or a separation agreement which states that your last date of work is at the end of December 2022 and that you'll receive your severance payment in 2023. And the importance of these documents are the fact that these are the documents that you'll want to have when you file an appeal. If you do get a payment that exceeds the earning limit and you're not at your normal retirement age, you can avoid losing Social Security benefits by taking an appeal. And the notice you get from the Social Security Administration is pretty clear. It tells you why they want to reduce your benefits, and they're very clear about how and when and under what circumstances you can file your appeal. So you'll have the ability to file an appeal and say, wait a minute, yes, I received that $50,000 in 2023, but it was for work I did in 2022, and here's the proof. Here's the firm announcement. Here's part of my separation agreement. Here's part of my bonus agreement. And that'll help you convince the Social Security Administration that you shouldn't lose benefits based on this special, based on these special payments. The other thing you might want to do too, in anticipation of a possible appeal, is as part of your separation agreement or severance agreement, you may want to negotiate a provision in there that provides that your employer, upon your request, will draft a letter to the Social Security Administration, or to both you and the Social Security Administration, explaining your date of retirement and the fact that that all the whatever payment you received in 2023 relates to your work in 2022. So that's another record you have. But the importance is keep good records, because you'll want to do an appeal under these circumstances, and those documents will really help you be successful in your appeal. Okay, so in addition to working, there are other questions you will consider, and as to when it's best for you under your particular circumstances to collect your Social Security benefits. For example, what is your health, and what is your goal? Is your goal to get the highest monthly benefits? Is your goal to get benefits earlier when you're healthier and more active? Or is your goal to get the most lifetime benefits, the total lifetime benefits, which can be a factor of age and the amount? For example, are you willing to accept a lower benefit at 62 or 63 or 64 while you are most active and most healthy? Or would you rather wait and collect a higher monthly benefit at 70? Because again, as I mentioned before, you're probably never going to be as healthy as you are right now. You're probably never going to be as mobile as you are right now. So you may want the money now. You may not be willing, or may not want to wait till you're 68 or 69 or 70. Also, longevity has a factor as a consideration in this issue. Do you have longevity in your family? Do you have a chronic illness? Are you a cancer survivor? All these issues may be a factor in your consideration of when you want to take your Social Security. I mean, do you have the life expectancy to wait until 70? And it also ties into this break-even year, because if you are a person that wants to maximize your total Social Security benefits over your entire lifetime, it's generally understood that at least under current law, the break-even year will be 80. And that is the year in which you will get the same benefits, same total Social Security benefits, if you start collecting at 62 as if you would wait until 70. Because, of course, at 70 you'll get more. If you collect at 62, you'll get less, but you'll collect over more years. So that's generally considered the break-even year. And you can consider various aspects of your longevity and your health if that's the consideration that you have. Another consideration about when you want to collect Social Security is what's your financial situation? What other assets or what other income do you have? You have a lifestyle goal, most likely, and the question is, how are you going to financially support that lifestyle goal? Well, for example, do you have substantial savings? If you do, you maybe want to draw down those savings and use that to fund your lifestyle and hold off collecting Social Security. Did you get an inheritance recently? That could be the same consideration. Some senior lawyers have income-producing property or an interest in a business. Perhaps those assets, those business assets or those real estate assets, would give you enough income such that you could fund your lifestyle that you desire at this stage in your life, and wait to collect Social Security until later. And finally, many of you, probably most of us, have either IRAs or 401k plans that we've invested in over the years. And the issue there is it better for you to withdraw money from your IRA or your 401k to fund your lifestyle and hold off collecting Social Security? Or is it better for you to collect Social Security and allow your IRAs and your 401k plans to continue to accrue and they accrue generally not on a tax-exempt basis, but on a tax-deferred basis. Again, a very personal decision um, that you have to make. Now, I do cite the investment returns, which certainly I think is a factor in deciding how you're going to fund your lifestyle. Um, and I cite the statistics there that for the 10 years preceding 2020, um, the investment return of the S&P was about 11%. Now this year, of course, 2022, of course, was a terrible investment year, but 2021 was a great investment year. So I suspect, and I haven't seen the statistics on this yet, but I suspect that the time period from 2010 to 2022 probably falls in that 11% range for the S&P for recovery for investment returns. So again, question there about which is best for you, and again, a very personal decision there. And then finally, this is a topic that I really have not seen much discussion of. I mean, we've probably all seen discussions of Social Security recommendations. We've probably read articles, or we've heard folks talk on the radio or on TV talking about when it's best to collect your Social Security benefits. And again, it's such a personal decision that I personally am surprised that most of the articles I've read and most of the folks I've heard speak really are in the camp of waiting to 70. In fact, a recent article I read went so far as to suggest that individuals move in with someone else to save expenses so that they can push off collecting Social Security benefits as long as they can, which I think is moving in with someone else is, I think, something that most senior lawyers do not want to do. But again, it's a highly personal decision. A lot of factors involved. We've talked about some of them, but here's one that I haven't seen discussed hardly at all, and I think it is still very important. And the point is, all of our assumptions and our decisions are generally made upon what's the Social Security law right now as it relates to our personal circumstances. But the bottom line is that Social Security rules, Social Security laws can change, and they have changed over the years. And so the question is, if those laws do change in the near future, what effect does that have on your decision? Do you want to collect earlier? Do you want to collect later? And that's what I'd like to talk about now. And the reason it's important is because the Social Security Administration tells us that the law could change. The first bullet point on this slide comes from an actual Social Security statement. It says, quote, "Your estimated benefits are based on current law." And it continues on. It says the law governing benefit amounts may change. So here's the Social Security Administration telling you up front in your yearly statement that look at all these assumptions, but they're based on current law and it may change. And of course, if it changes, those dollar amounts could change. And you see that the language, the law governing benefits amounts may change, is bolded. That's not something I did. That is something that was bolded in the statement that I took this, from the Social Security Administration statement that I took this from. So here, not only are telling you things could change based on the law, but they're telling you that they're emphasizing it, so you should consider it. And the bottom line is that Social Security law has changed over the years, so you might expect it to change in the future. For example, over the years, more and a higher percentage of Social Security benefits are being taxed for most Social Security recipients. Other changes over the years has the normal retirement age has moved up to 67 now, I believe is the maximum, but that could change in the future as well. Furthermore, the earnings test reduction that we talked about before has become tighter over the years. So bottom line is on that issue, work has been penalized more recently than it has been in the past. So the bottom line is Social Security Administration is telling us, hey, things could change, and we have seen them change over the years. And the reason I think that this is something to consider, again, this would be the third bullet point there. Um, the Social Security Administration now estimates that by 2034, the Social Security system will only be able to pay out 77% of promised benefits. And that comes, and again, the citation there is to the annual report of the trustees, et cetera, of the Old Age Survivors Insurance, and that's basically the trustees of the Social Security Administration. So the question is, what's going to happen? So far, Congress has been very reluctant to increase Social Security taxes and has been very reluctant to increase the threshold above which no Social Security taxes are taken out. And so that might solve the solvency problem of the Social Security Administration. But if that reluctance continues, there could be benefit cuts in the future. And again, the materials here show it, and you can see it in other announcements. Benefits could be cut. And how would that be done? The benefits could be further means tested. And again, I have not seen this specific proposal, but I could certainly see some legislators suggesting the following. Suggesting that individuals with substantial assets have reduced benefits, whereas individuals with lower assets get their full benefits. For example, if you're a senior lawyer and you've been working full-time for 20, 25 years, you invested regularly, you could have $750,000 up to $1 million in a IRA or combined IRAs and 401k plans. You could realistically have those kind of assets if you've been fully invested in the stock market. In comparison, I've seen reports over the years where many of our fellow citizens only have, let's say, $70,000 to $80,000 in retirement assets. So they are ill prepared for retirement. So I could certainly see a circumstance under which the Social Security Administration rules could be changed by Congress and by the President to pay those with much higher asset levels less, and fully pay those who have only, let's say, less than $100,000 saved for retirement. Again, haven't seen the specific proposal, but as a sharing of the burden, a fairness issue, I could certainly see that be a proposal if the Social Security taxes are not increased. And so the question then is, when would those changes take effect? Would it affect people who are in pay status, or would it affect only those who are not in pay status? I think it'd be more likely that it would be those in non-pay status, but it could apply. So that could affect your decision as to when to collect Social Security benefits as well. And it could affect your break-even year. Let's say that the break-even year is generally thought of as 80 when you collect as much as you at 62 as you would by waiting to 70. If for some reason Social Security law changes and you don't get your full benefits and you wait till 70, that could push out that break-even year. And you might ask how this all might take place. Well, administratively, again, I haven't seen the proposal on this, but it could be done administratively relatively easily, because we all certify under penalty of perjury our income every year. And we all get our 401k statements and our IRA statements at the end of the year. If this plan were to be put in effect where it was further means testing, I certainly believe that something like this could be added to your tax return, where you had to certify what your total retirement assets are as of December 31st of the prior year. And that's one way the government would know exactly who would be getting a benefit reduction and who would be getting full benefits. Again, have not seen the proposal, but stranger things have happened. And that certainly is another consideration. That's why you can see that decision as to when you collect Social Security benefits, it's highly personal, and it's no one size fits all, and it's dependent on a lot of moving parts and a lot of factors. So you've worked hard for your Social Security benefits. Look at your personal circumstances and the rules, and just choose the best option for you. But again, I think there is no best option for everyone or universal option. Waiting may be the best option for you based on your Social Security, based on your circumstances, but collecting earlier may be the best for you as well. And of course, there is that nuance of survivor benefits. So next, I want to move on to Medicare alternatives. And one of the things I want to start with here is just want to show you. This is a booklet called Medicare and You, and I highly recommend it. As a Medicare recipient, I get it every year. You can get it from the Medicare administration, and you may be able to get it online as well. But the only reason I suggest maybe not getting it online is because the one I get every year is very Illinois specific, and I'll tell you why that's important in a few minutes. And I'm not sure that online the Medicare and You booklet that you get will be Illinois specific, and that's very important. Medicare decisions, especially if you're in original Medicare, they can be pretty complex based on certain factors that we'll talk about. So you may want to consider getting some help. There are independent insurance brokers who do not represent a particular company, but they can look at your circumstances, get your information, and they can recommend for you some good alternatives. And that's just one thing you may want to consider here at the outset. So what we're going to talk about now is Medicare, and the question, the kind of the comparison is original Medicare versus Medicare Advantage programs. And Medicare Advantage programs are the things you see on TV a lot. You'll see Joe Namath pitching some of them, and other insurance companies pitching some of those, and we'll talk about those in a few minutes. But I want to talk about original Medicare first, because that's really what most people think of when they think of Medicare. And you basically have a choice. You can go with original Medicare, or you can go with Medicare Advantage, which we'll talk about in a moment. So original Medicare is basically two parts. Part A is like hospitalization and a facility charge for facilities. Part B of original Medicare is primarily your doctor's charges. For example, Part A will be skilled nursing, hospitals, hospice coverage. Part B will typically be doctors and tests, things like that are ordered. So that was just basically what basic original Medicare covers. Now, one of the advantages I think of original Medicare is that there are no networks. With original Medicare, you can go to any hospital, you can go to any doctor, any health facility that takes Medicare, and most do. And the importance of no networks is that, let's say that as a retiree you're going to spend 3 months in Florida or 3 months in Arizona. Well, you can go to any of those facilities, whether you're still living in Illinois or splitting your time, and you're going to be treated. There's not going to be a penalty because you're out of network. So that's one factor of original Medicare that some folks really like. Also, one of the advantages I think of original Medicare is you can see a specialist without a referral and without an additional payment. For example, if you injure your knee, under original Medicare, you can go to your local orthopedic practice and be treated. Again, provided they take Medicare, and most likely they will. You don't need to go through a gatekeeper. You don't need to go through your primary care physician. You don't need to get a referral, and you won't pay extra. You'll pay what the Medicare charges. So that's important. Or let's say that you spent a lot of time out in the sun during your lifetime and you're concerned about skin cancer. Under original Medicare, you can go to the dermatologist on a yearly basis and have a checkup and make sure you don't have issues, skin cancer issues. And again, you don't. Under those circumstances, you can just go to your local dermatologist practice, and you do not need to get a referral from anyone to see the specialist. And that's something that a lot of folks like. Now, one thing to remember is Original Medicare does not cover everything. It covers most procedures, it covers most tests, but there are some procedures and some tests that are not covered. For example, let's say there's a procedure or a test that is not fully accepted according to Medicare in the scientific community. If that is the case, Medicare will not cover it, but your healthcare provider will be pretty clear with you in most instances, informing you of that up front, so that you will then have the choice of paying for it out of pocket, but Medicare will not cover it. But again, you will find that Medicare is very, very comprehensive and covers most doctor visit issues and facilities such as hospitalizations or skilled nursing facilities. However, there are a number of things that Medicare does not cover. For example, original Medicare does not cover prescription drug plans, does not cover vision, does not cover dental or long-term care. And we'll talk about some of those issues in a moment. Also, original Medicare does not cover everything, even though it covers doctor visits and facilities, your hospital visits and things. There are some deductibles and copays that we'll talk about in a moment. And for that reason, there is some supplemental insurance that some folks on original Medicare, they go ahead and purchase as well. All right, so then let's talk about original Medicare premiums. If you choose original Medicare, what are you going to pay? For example, for Part A, again, this is the facilities hospitalization charges. You will not pay a monthly premium for the Part A hospitalization coverage, provided you've worked and paid into the system for a sufficient period of time. You've paid in Medicare taxes for a sufficient period of time, and that is typically 10 years. And if that's the case, you will not be paying a monthly payment for the hospitalization insurance. However, you will be paying a monthly premium for the doctor, the Part B, the doctor charges, primarily doctor charges, and that's about $170 per month for the year 2022, and that'll be adjusted as time goes by. As time goes by, it'll go up. In addition, if you are a high-income individual, you will also likely have to pay an income-related adjustment based on your modified adjusted gross income, in addition to the $170 per month charge for Medicare Part B. And your modified adjusted gross income figure that is defined as your adjusted gross income from your tax return plus any tax-exempt interest that you have. And so for the year 2022, if as a joint filer you had more than $182,000 in modified adjusted gross income, you would pay that income-related adjustment premium in addition to your normal premium. So that would be your total premium. If you're that high-income person or a high-income couple, you would be paying the $170 plus the income-related adjustment. And that's on a sliding scale. It'll go up the more you make, and it starts at the $182,000 level. Now, every year before the beginning of the calendar year, you will be receiving a notice from Medicare. It'll tell you what the new base premium is for Part B, and it'll also tell you whatever your Medicare determined your income-related adjustment is. And you'll have the opportunity to appeal that, which I'll talk about in a minute. Now, Medicare determines your income-related adjustment based on your tax returns from 2 years ago, and those may be out of date as it relates to your current income. For example, 2 years ago, so again, let's say let's say we're looking in the future, it's 2024, and you get a notice in late 2023 from the Medicare administration saying that the base premium is $180, and oh, by the way, you made too much money in 2022, so you're going to have to pay a income-related adjustment. You'll have the opportunity to appeal that, and as with the Social Security Administration, notices you get, the Medicare administration notices are pretty good about telling you how to appeal and what to appeal. You'll have the opportunity to do that. You can explain to the Social Security, to the Medicare administration that you're no longer working, that you had a life event, your retirement, and that your income from 2022 is not reflective of your current income, and they hopefully will reduce or eliminate your income-related adjustment there, and you'll hopefully only have to pay the standard monthly premium for Part B of Medicare. And again, that life event could be your retirement. It could be the fact that you got a one-time payment like a bonus or a severance payment, or you sold an asset, something like that, that increased your modified adjusted gross income that you're not going to have in 2024. So that's the kind of thing. Another reason to keep good records, tell the Social Security Administration that the income they're relying on is no longer reflected based on what you're currently making, and you'll have that appeal process. As far as payments go, your Part B monthly premium, the $170 for this past year, and whatever it is for next year, it will be deducted from your Social Security payment every month. Or if you don't receive Social Security, you will have to make the payment directly to Medicare. All right, now Medicare deductibles. You'll find, I think, that Medicare is reasonably priced, considering, especially if you have been paying your own health insurance as an independent, as an owner, or if you have non-subsidized health insurance. So you can see the premiums are pretty low, and the deductibles are pretty reasonable too, at least for the doctor's visits, which we'll talk about in a moment. But first, let's talk about Part A deductibles, because these are the high deductibles. These are the deductibles you would pay for your hospitalization. And it's, for this year, and again, it'll go up next year, it's $1,556. And that's for each benefit period. And the important thing to realize for hospitalization is the benefit period is not a yearly period. It's defined in the second bullet point there. It begins when the benefit period begins when you enter the facility and ends when you've been out of the facility for 60 days. So, for example, let's say you're hospitalized at the beginning of the year, and you get out of the hospital, and then 70 days later, you have a relapse or another serious condition that requires hospitalization. And you're in for a period of time, and you're out, and then you have another serious hospitalization 70 days after your last release. Well, under that hypothetical, you could be paying three of the Part A you could be paying, the Part A deductible 3 different times, or about $4,500. And with that, so that is the major expense that is, I would say, is not covered by Part A of Medicare. Also, under Part A of Medicare, once you're admitted and once you have covered the deductible, Medicare will pay the cost of the facility for 60 days, but after that, you're responsible for it. So as you can see, at least in the hospitalization context, you could have some significant out-of-pocket costs under original Medicare, and there is a way to insure over that, which we'll talk about in a minute. Now, the Part B deductible is much more reasonable. This past year, it's only $233, and it is for the entire year. You will not pay that deductible more than once during the entire calendar year. And I think you'll find, compared to many plans you've been on in the past, that deductible is very modest and very, very good. Now, after you meet the Part B deductible, again, this is the doctor's charges, primarily doctor's tests. Medicare, after you meet that deductible, Medicare pays 80% of the Medicare approved charges, and you are responsible for the additional 20%. So you can see that you have some out-of-pocket exposure there, not only for Part A, but for Part B, for the deductible, and for the 20% you're responsible for. And because you are you're liable for the Part A deductible, part of the Part A coinsurance that we talked about, the 60-day issue, and also the 20% that Medicare does not cover for doctors. You have some significant or some serious exposure, perhaps, depending on your health situation, um, of out-of-pocket costs. And that's why many seniors will purchase what are called supplemental or Medigap policies. Now, Medigap policies are not run by the Social Security Administration, by the Medicare Administration, but they are monitored. They are sold by individual insurance companies. For example, you will find that Blue Cross will issue a plan generally. Mutual of Omaha will issue a plan generally, and many other insurance companies will too. And the reason you may want to use the Medigap policy is because it'll cover things like the Part A deductible, which for the hospitalization, the 1556. It'll cover some of the co-insurance that you might have in a hospitalization. It'll cover the 20% that you don't that you have to pay after you meet your deductible for your doctor charges. Again, these are private insurance companies. They will vary. The premiums may vary slightly, but they are all there. They only offer the plans that are listed there: A through G and K through N. And those all have the same benefits, and they're mandated by the Medicare administration. So whoever you buy it from, whatever company you buy it from, it'll have the same benefits, but maybe at a different cost based on your insurance company. And again, A through G have different benefits. All the A's have the same benefits. All the Plan K's have the same benefits, regardless of which insurance company offers them. But again, look carefully at plans A through G and K through N to see which one fits for you best. And again, those are in the Medicare New publication I showed you, and they're also easily available online. You can see exactly what's covered and what's not covered. There are comprehensive and there are less comprehensive ones that you can check out there. But again, Medigap policy is definitely want to look into if you are going to be on original Medicare. And again, Medigap policies follow Social Security. So again, in that rare instance where there's a procedure or a test that is not covered by original Medicare, your Medigap will not cover that. And also your Medigap policy will not cover vision, dental, and long-term care. Prescription drugs are also not covered by original Medicare. So if you're on a blood pressure medication you take every day, or a statin of something, or whatever your medication might be, it's not covered by original Medicare. So many people will go ahead and buy a prescription drug plan. It's often referred to as Medicare Part D. These are also sold by insurance companies, and their provisions and their benefits vary widely. You can get their information from various insurance companies on the internet, and also there's a very good discussion of them in the Medicare and You booklet that I mentioned before for the Illinois plans. And again, not all plans are offered everywhere. For example, there may be a plan for the Springfield area or downstate, Southern Illinois, another plan for the Chicagoland area. So they're very specific. And these plans typically treat drugs as Tier 1 through Tier 5. Tier 1 is going to be the drugs that common blood pressure, common cholesterol medication. The cost is relatively low, can be maybe nothing, all the way up to Tier 5, more sophisticated drugs, more complex drugs, and you will have a higher deductible for those, and you will also have a higher copay. So that's something to check out. One way to maybe do make your best decision here is to use a independent broker. Like I mentioned, you can provide that broker with the medication you take. That broker can take a look at the various plans that are available, prescription drug plans in your area, and make recommendations and give you an idea as to what the cost is and things like that. And sometimes that's a lot easier than doing the searching all by yourself. The other alternative is Medicare Advantage plans, and this is a separate way to take care of your health costs in retirement. You have a choice of original Medicare, which we've gone over, or Medicare Advantage plans, and Medicare Advantage plans generally seek to bundle your health care coverage. For example, most Medicare Advantage plans will cover the Part A facilities charges. It'll cover the Part B doctor visits. It may cover prescription drug plans. It may provide for dental insurance. It may provide for vision coverage. So it's a bundling, and it can be more expansive than original Medicare unless you bundle, unless you have prescription drugs and things like that with your original Medicare. These are offered by individual insurance companies, and they set the premiums. And again, the premiums will vary based on your region of the state. There may be more options in the Chicagoland area, fewer options downstate, and that's why it's so specific. You have to be very careful in looking at the options that are available to you. Again, the Medicare New Book that I mentioned has a good summary of the plans that are offered in Illinois and the costs and things like that. And you'll find that the costs vary quite a bit. One issue with Medicare Advantage plans, though, is that they do have networks. Many of them are organized as HMOs or PPOs, and so your choices are more limited as far as providers and facilities. Or if you go outside of the network, you may be able to do that, but you may have to do that at a higher cost. So, for example, my example of that, if you spend half the year in Arizona or Florida, Medicare Advantage plan may not. We should consider the fact that you will be out of network and how that will affect your health care coverage and how it will affect your health care costs. Another issue with Medicare Advantage is many of the plans will charge you more for a visit with a specialist, and they may also require you to get a referral from your primary care doctor for a specialist. So again, you may not have the type of flexibility of choice that you have under original Medicare if you go with a Medicare Advantage plan. And again, these are so fact specific that it's important to check it out, because the rules are different on specialists. The premiums are different, and it's a very specific inquiry that you have to make, and careful inquiry that you have to make if you're going to go with the Medicare Advantage plan. But some folks love Medicare Advantage. It's the best option for them. And again, it depends on your circumstances, and some folks like the bundling, like the additional dental benefits and things like that. But you want to make sure that, if you're going to go this route, make sure that your dentist or your healthcare provider is within the network, or if you're willing to go with the network and change healthcare providers. The other thing with a Medicare Advantage plan is you have to be careful, because there may be a several $1,000s out-of-pocket costs that you may have because of the coverage and the deductibles and things like that. Now, you may also have that in a original Medicare plan, but you can insure and reduce that exposure by using one of the Medigap plans. So again, it's just two different choices, two different alternatives, two different ways to cover your health insurance in your retirement, and that's really it's a very personal decision based on your circumstances, just like the decision of when to collect Social Security. Some people love the bundling. Some people like the security of knowing they'll have the larger networks. So in summary, again, as with Social Security, there's no one-size-fits-all answer. It's a highly personal decision. Original Medicare, if you go that route and you get a prescription drug plan and you get a Medigap, you will have some limited out-of-pocket expenses, and you'll have access to most likely the broadest range of healthcare facilities and providers. But your income, your your monthly premiums may be higher. Now with Medicare Advantage, you will pay a monthly premium for the Medicare Advantage plan specified by the plan, but you'll also have to pay the 170 Part B premium. So that'll be in addition to whatever you pay on the Medicare Advantage plan. Again, Medicare Advantage plan in total, all things considered, may have lower premiums than original Medicare, and it may provide you with additional benefits. For example, again, it may provide you with dental benefits, vision benefits, things like that. But you will find, I think, that referrals to specialists are more of a challenge, and you will have a narrower range of healthcare facilities and doctors to choose from. But again, that's just the trade-off that you have to personally decide. So the bottom line is, this is just a very basic seminar. I hope you've seen some of the issues and things that you'll want to consider as you make these decisions. But definitely carefully consider your own personal circumstances along with the Social Security rules and the Medicare rules, so that you can make the best decision for you going forward. You've worked hard. Enjoy your retirement. Thank you.